Ancient Dina reveals who the Maya really were and why they collapsed. Imagine uncovering the secrets of an entire civilization, not from monuments, not from written records, but from tiny fragments of Dina hidden in bones that have survived thousands of years. Ancient Dina has a way of rewriting history, revealing truths that archaeology alone could only hint at. Today, we are going to dive deep into what genetic evidence tells us about the Maya, who they really were, how they lived, and the factors that may have contributed to one of the most dramatic collapses in human history. Before we go any further, make sure to subscribe right now, because content like this changes the way we see the past, and if you stay until the end, you will see details that even textbooks don't mention. And while you're watching, think about this. What would you do if you found out that everything you thought you knew about an ancient culture was only part of the story? Drop your thoughts in the comments as we go, because I want to hear which revelations surprise you the most. Recent breakthroughs in ancient Dina analysis have allowed scientists to piece together a remarkably detailed genetic map of the Maya. For decades, our understanding of this civilization relied heavily on architecture, glyphs, and ceramics, all of which told a compelling story, but one with large gaps. Who were these people genetically, and how did their populations interact with neighboring groups? Da tells us that the Maya were not isolated city-states as many previously assumed. Instead, they were part of a complex network of trade, migration, and genetic exchange spanning Mesoamerica. This shifts our perspective. The Maya were not only culturally sophisticated, but genetically diverse, with a population that thrived on connections, alliances, and exchange across vast distances. Knowing this makes their achievements, massive pyramids, complex calendars, and advanced agriculture even more extraordinary. What stands out immediately from the Dina evidence is the sheer diversity within Maya populations. Previous archaeological assumptions often treated communities like Tikal or Köppen as homogeneous, but genetics reveals a mosaic of ancestries and lineages. Families were moving, mixing, and sometimes merging between regions far apart, creating resilience in certain areas while also setting the stage for vulnerabilities in others. This discovery challenges a long-standing narrative that viewed the Maya as static city-states operating in isolation. Instead, we see a civilization that was interconnected at multiple levels, and yet this very connectivity may have had hidden consequences when environmental stressors struck. Think about this. A network that is resilient in times of plenty can also propagate collapse quickly when resources fail. Drop a comment if this reshapes how you've imagined ancient civilizations, because the Maya were clearly far more dynamic than the textbooks suggest. Agriculture was at the core of Maya society, and Dina has provided fascinating insights into what they were eating, how they adapted, and the pressures this created. Isotopic analysis of skeletal remains shows that maize was the dominant staple, but not the only one. Beans, squash, chili peppers, and even wild plants contributed to their diet, revealing a sophisticated knowledge of crop rotation and sustainable farming. Yet the Dina also reveals subtle stress markers, periods where malnutrition and disease were far more prevalent. These genetic signals correspond with known drought periods, showing that the Maya were not immune to environmental changes. Their diet, combined with population density, made them resilient for centuries, but also vulnerable when rainfall patterns shifted. Understanding this biological evidence adds a layer of realism to the historical narrative, showing that even a civilization as advanced as the Maya could be brought to its knees by climate variability. Another revelation from ancient Dina relates to disease. Skeletal remains show traces of pathogens that had long been invisible in the archaeological record. Genetic sequencing of ancient bones suggests that the Maya were periodically affected by infections that would have stressed populations already coping with environmental and social pressures. These pathogens were not just incidental, they interacted with nutrition, crop failures, and population density to create cycles of health crises. What is striking is how this aligns with historical collapse patterns. When multiple stressors coincide, drought, malnutrition, disease, social structures that seemed stable can rapidly deteriorate. Ancient Dina allows us to see these hidden layers, demonstrating that collapse was rarely a single event, but rather a complex interaction of biological, environmental, and societal factors. Social hierarchy and mobility also emerge from genetic studies in ways previously impossible to know. Analysis of burial sites indicates that elite lineages were often genetically distinct from the general population, but there were also frequent instances of intermarriage between city-states. This challenges previous assumptions that Maya elites were entirely insular. Instead, the DNA shows deliberate patterns of mobility and alliance building through marriage and kinship networks. These alliances likely reinforced political stability for centuries, but they also reveal that social collapse would not have been isolated. It would have rippled through interconnected families and power structures. It's a reminder that societies, past and present, are deeply influenced by social networks just as much as by technology or resources. Drop a comment if you can think of modern parallels. How much do alliances, both personal and political, shape resilience today? One of the most talked about questions in Maya history is why so many of the great cities collapsed in the 9th century CE. Ancient Dina doesn't give us the full answer, but it provides crucial context. The genetic evidence, when combined with environmental data, paints a picture of multiple overlapping stressors. Extended droughts affected agricultural output, population pressures increased competition for resources, and disease outbreaks exacerbated the situation. Cities with less genetic diversity or fewer connections may have struggled to adapt, while interconnected populations could have temporarily offset some risks. The key insight is that collapse was not uniform. Some areas continued to thrive while others declined. Finally, ancient Dina tells us something profoundly human. The Maya were resilient, adaptive, and innovative. Their genetic record shows survival through centuries of change, movement across regions, and adaptation to environmental challenges. Yet it also highlights fragility, how even the most advanced societies are constrained by biology, climate, and resource availability. By studying Dina alongside archaeology, we gain a more nuanced view of who the Maya really were. People who built incredible cities, developed advanced writing and astronomy, and yet were ultimately bound by the same ecological and biological realities that affect all societies. This perspective helps modern societies learn from the past, emphasizing the balance between technology, networks, and environmental stewardship. Somewhere in the middle of all this, if this level of detail and insight is changing how you think about history, make sure to subscribe, because we will continue exploring ancient civilizations in ways that textbooks cannot. And now, at the end, if this breakdown of the Maya through the lens of ancient Dina helped you understand the human story behind the ruins, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who thinks history is just about dates and monuments. Drop a comment telling us which Maya revelation surprised you most, the Dina that shows disease vulnerability, migration patterns, or social structure. Your insight may spark discussion that adds another layer to our understanding of this incredible civilization.